Hello and welcome to Soundtrack to My Life, the show that slips between the sheet music of some serious talent. Tonight, showcasing an Australian in London, the amazing voice of Mr. Darren Hayes. Welcome to the show.
It's very kind of you to say. Thanks for having me.
I'm not lying.
Oh.
It's fantastic, as we're going to hear later. Now, you were born in Brisbane,
Yep.
So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Tell us about the early years.
Oh, God, what do you want to know?
Whatever juice there is, that's what we want.
Well, I'm the youngest of three kids, and of Bob and Judy, mum and dad, in, I don't know what the equivalent would be in the UK, but it was, you know, definitely lower middle class, hard-working kind of town. And it was kind of tough, actually. You know, we struggled for money, definitely. My dad was he was a hard drinker. He was a bit violent. He was a lot violent, actually. I love him to death, and years later he cleaned his act up. But the first 10 years or so of my life were very challenging, to say the least. And that, I think, was a huge part of why I became a musician.
What I was just about to say, is that what turned you on to it? I mean, can you remember a defining moment where you thought, I think music's going to be what I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I could sing from a little kid, really. I could always sing, and I used to imitate the records that we listened to, and a lot of them were women. So I'm sorry if you love or hate my voice. The reason it's so high is I used to imitate a lot of Motown singers and Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson, things like that, because we couldn't afford to buy records, and the records that we had were hand-me-downs and older records. And music was obviously my escape. Music and film were the things that, when things were crazy at home, I would just kind of go off in my head and yeah, just become someone else.
When you were young, who did you want to be? Was there anyone that you had the old hairbrush in the mirror?
Yeah, of course, but it's sad because...
Will you share?
Well, I mean, look, I think at one point I wanted to be Madonna, which is really
Didn't
strange.
we all, Darren?
Oh, thank you for saying that. Before her, obviously, it was Michael. It was... I remember seeing a Michael Jackson concert, and this kind of transition happened where I was in the audience, and I thought, I don't want to be one of these things. I want to be there. I want to be him. I want to make people do what we're all doing now. And I had a similar thing with Madonna in that it was just her boldness and her ambition and her dedication, even to things like her body. I mean, she had a body that looked like a specimen, in a lab somewhere. It was just so fiercely toned, and at a period in where people didn't even go to the gym. So I would say those two.
How did Savage Garden get started?
We got started first as a really dodgy covers band called Red Edge. And
this was the rock covers band,
yeah,
yes?
Yeah, and my first gigs with them involved me literally with stacks of lyrics on the stage, moving them with my feet, trying to sing songs by this band called Cold Chisel, which are like our nation's Oasis.
Right.
And I didn't know the words, so that's just about murder. And in doing that for sort of almost 2 years, Daniel Jones, the other guy in the band, and I became friends.
So the success of Savage Garden, was that a big learning curve for you? It was huge. How many millions of records sold?
The band,
albums,
the band sold about 22 million records. It was one of those things like you have to be careful for what you wish for, because I dreamed of this and almost willed this into being, and all of a sudden I'd gone from Brisbane to Manhattan. Clive Davis, who was the president of Arista at the time, had flown us to Manhattan. It's the first time I'd ever left the country. Suddenly I'm in New York. I didn't really have a chance from that moment to about 5 years later to really appreciate just the enormity of what was about to occur. And
so Savage Garden, huge, and then you broke it up. Was that hard to do?
Yeah, because it was completely unexpected on my half. I mean, you have to understand, this was a band of just two people, like Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart, or like Hall & Oates. It was literally a songwriting partnership. It really wasn't even a band. It was two people that made everything, produced everything, got thrown into the stratosphere, and I loved it, as you can imagine, and he really struggled with it. It was the attention. There were times when we would literally have to coax him out of a dressing room and say, like, dude, it's okay, we're on top of the pops, we have to do this, and he, bless him, he did everything that was asked of him until it kind of broke him, and we were a week away from releasing our second album. I Knew I Loved You was #1 on the American Billboard charts. And I remember coming into a band meeting and he just looked like he'd been crying. And I was like, what's going on? And everybody just looked at me, you know, when they've got bad news and they're like, the band's ending. And he just said, look, I can't do this anymore. And, you know, if you love someone and I sort of grew up with Daniel, you know, we both came from the same part of town and, you know, you support whatever decision they make. It was like a roller coaster. There were intense moments. There were duets with Pavarotti. There was Madonna coming to my show.
How did that happen?
The Madonna thing's crazy. I've only recently met her face to face, but years before I met her, there was a man called Tommy Mottola who used to run Sony.
Married to Mariah.
Married to Mariah
Famously,
Carey,
yes.
and he was friends with Madonna. And I was signed to Sony, so Tommy knew of me. And we're playing a show in New York City, in just a theatre, maybe like 3,000 people. And I get this phone call. Yo, it's Tommy Mottola on the phone. I'm like, okay. Hi, Tommy. He's like, yo, Darren, I hear you do Ray of Light in your show. And I'd been doing Ray of Light at my sound checks. I didn't perform it in the show. And I said, no, Tommy, I know, I do it at my sound check. He's like, well, Em thinks you do it in a show, and she's coming tonight, so you do it in your show, don't you? And I went, yes, I do. And I hung up, and I ran back and...
What track would you have played at your funeral?
I've got my funeral planned out.
Have you? Come on, let's hear it. I love hearing the funeral soundtrack.
The whole theme of the funeral is, it's not as good without Darren, is it? So the food would be really bad. I would have really bad catering, right? And I would schedule it in a month where it was guaranteed to rain. And just things would go wrong. I'd make them book a venue that was just falling apart, whatever. And I would want people to be just chowing down on their pouring cocktails going, nothing's the same without him, is it? So I don't know. I don't know about the music. Probably something like Why by Annie Lennox. Why?
Everybody would be so miserable.
Yeah.
Now, you've been married twice.
Yeah.
First time to a woman.
Yeah.
And most recently to Richard.
Yeah.
I've got to ask, who's better around the house? Men or women? Be careful, Darren.
Oh, women, of course. Of course, women. I mean, look, I'll tell you something extraordinary. I feel very lucky, actually, in my life that... look, hand on my heart, I'm a gay man, and I should never have married my childhood sweetheart because, obviously, it hurt both of us. I was trying to fix the things that were broken in my life, and so, like many gay men who have a female best friend, we mistook our connection for romantic love. And it was deeper than that, and I feel really lucky that I got to experience what it's like to really love a woman.
When did you first come and spend time in London? Because you're based here now, you said earlier, you're living in Notting Hill, aren't you?
Yeah, I've lived here for 3 years. I'm coming up to my 4th year, and I came here completely by accident. I made this record called The Tension and the Spark, which Sony hated, but the enemy loved. So I got the best reviews of my life, and no one promoted it, and therefore no one bought it. And I should have been absolutely miserable. But I was here in London where the UK record company were adorable to me, and they were just so getting behind the record, and they knew they were up against this global kind of, you know, impossibility because as a company, the company weren't behind the album, but my UK team were. And I don't know, I just kind of had a feeling about, I know this sounds nuts, but there was like a magic in the air, and I should have been really sad because, you know, as you mentioned, I'd sold 25 million records and suddenly I couldn't get arrested, and I met Richard. I met the man that I ended up marrying in a civil partnership, and all of my troubles just faded away into insignificance. I met this man who didn't have the luxury of having parents to blame. His parents had died when he was quite young, and he was so full of joy and funny, and really helped me fall in love with London and this history here of theatre and art and a sort of a way of laughing at your misery. That's what I loved about first coming here, and that's what I love about living in this country.